Hi everybody, I hope you're well. I'm Sultan. I am an independent international law advisor and I also teach law. Today I'm going to talk to you about civic duties or responsibilities or civic engagement, because I think that given the current times and the current age that we find ourselves in, it's extremely important that in addition to knowing and fighting for our individual fundamental rights, it's equally important for us to understand and discharge our duties and responsibilities as citizens. So when it comes to civic engagement, the first thing that we ought to do as responsible citizens is to always obey the law. Obeying the law does not mean that one cannot constructively disagree with legislation. One can form opinions about the law, but one can never not obey the law. Once a law has been enacted as law, then we have no choice but to follow the law. This is the central requirement of the rule of law. And unless societies or countries have citizens who obey the law at all times, we can't have democratic progress, democratic development, or economic development and prosperity. So that's the first and the most important thing that we as citizens should responsibly discharge, which is obeying the law at all times, not taking the law in our own hands. No vigilante justice can be tolerated in a state which abides by rule of law. The second thing is that, and this is something that I've noticed in Pakistan, and it's a problem in other post-colonial developing countries also, which is that there is a reluctance on the part of the citizenry to pay their taxes. So tax evasion is an issue, it's a problem. But as a responsible citizen, you should never evade your taxes. You should always pay the taxes which you are supposed to pay under the law. That's an essential part of your civic duties. The third thing, which I think is extremely important when it comes to civic engagement, is to make an effort to learn about what's going on in the country in terms of public issues and also internationally. And the reason this is important is because unless you're aware of the major issues, national as well as international, you can never make an informed choice at the polling booth. And unless the citizenry is voting based on informed choices, we are never going to get the government that we deserve, or the government that's going to work for us, or a government that's going to make things better for us. So it's our responsibility as citizens to exercise our vote responsibly, and part of that means first informing ourselves about what's going on in the country and about what's going on in the world. And again, here you should make an effort to read, develop a habit of reading widely and deeply. Only then will you be able to make those choices. And also, please, sometimes we can be conspiratorial, we can be superstitious, but when it comes to public affairs, you should always think rationally and reasonably. Your choices, your opinions should not be formed on the basis of emotions or sentiments. Rather, they should be formed on the basis of rationality and logic. And here it's extremely important that you should develop the ability to distinguish between what is fake news and what is not fake news. A lot of conspiracies and superstitions, that we end up falling for, whether it is related to COVID or whether it is related to political issues of the day, has to do with our inability to see through whether we are informing ourselves on the basis of fake news, misinformation, or disinformation. And all of this is unfortunately ripe in the information age because of the technologies that we are now consuming our information from, especially the social media. So please develop this media literacy. That's important. And lastly, while in a democratic, liberal, constitutionalist system, which is what Pakistan's system is supposed to be, individual autonomy is a cherished goal, and it should be. At the same time, we should also think about the common good. Unless we start thinking about the common good, we'll never be able to effectively meet the challenges of the 21st century, such as combating pandemics or fighting environmental degradation. So in addition to agitating for your individual rights, which you should do, which you must do, please also be mindful of making choices and adhering to the common good, which is thinking about not just yourself as an individual, but also thinking about the society and the state as well. Now, I'd also like to add that if we want to make democratic progress, and if we want to progress as a society, as a state, as a nation, then we will have to be more tolerant. These days, I notice there is so much toxicity when it comes to the political discourse that we just don't have any tolerance or respect for others' views. I think that's something also. I think that's also something that's fundamental to one's civic responsibility. Developing tolerance, not just tolerance, also compassion and kindness towards everybody else, especially those who are not as privileged as you are. So you take care of the minorities, you take care of those who don't have the financial resources that demands decent living, and so on and so forth. So tolerance and compassion is also something that should be actively inculcated and pursued if we are to become responsible citizens. So with that, I'd like to conclude and thank MM Talks for giving me the platform to address you. Thank you.